People, welcome to Newspaper Breakdown. It is the 23rd of the 2nd. I hope we are all fine. News stories to get through as always. In the latest of what feels like daily reviews, reports, studies on how the government is fucking us. The non-partisan think tank, the Institute for Government, has said that after 13 years of austerity and grave damage to the public sector's capacity as a result of the pandemic, it is unclear whether the government will find existing funding levels to be politically sustainable in the run-up to the next election. The concern at the moment is whether what we're doing is just putting money in to prevent further decline. The crisis that has hit the public sector at the moment may require more cash injections than just to stagnate as we're currently doing. Based on the current policy, the IFG forecasts that hospital waiting times and lists will remain above 2019 levels. Pupils will not catch up on lost learning, and the social care provider market will not be put on a sustainable long-term financial footing. The situation in prisons and courts are arguably worse. This is all austerity. This is 13 years of having a government do austerity, and it's important to remember because people seem to forget this every 5 seconds. Austerity has never stopped. The moment austerity was brought in around 2010, it hasn't stopped. Just because Osborne isn't there anymore, because when all of the cuts come in, those cuts stay there. And so unless you're financing the public sector to the amount that not only it was, but fucking more, you are either stagnating or still going down. That's just simple fucking maths. The report concludes that while increased budgets announced in the autumn statement should allow hospitals, GB practices, schools, and local government services to avoid real-term cuts for the rest of Parliament, the current budget does not provide the level of funding required for major improvements to performance. So once again, what we're doing is stagnation, and we've been stagnating or going down in 13 fucking years. And I've said it a million times before. If you do 1 minus 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 1 plus 2, you're still in a fucking minus. That's just incredibly simple, obvious fucking maths. And so for all of the cuts over the 13 years, the government could come out to you and say, I think you will find, Jackie boy, that we have actually put more money in than we did last time. You're still at a minus, because that's simple counting. And you would think that our MPs would be able to do simple counting. We may as well replace them all with fucking characters on pissing Sesame Street, because at least one of those fuckers can count. If we look at the NHS, the number of people on waiting lists for treatment is around 7.2 million. That's more than like 1.8. That's more than 1 in 8 people in England. The equivalent figure at the start of the pandemic was 4.4 million. The number waiting at least a year for treatment was 3,300 in March 2020. That figure is now around 400,000. The main problem being that the NHS is not working at the same speed as it was before, so it's finding it a lot harder to actually bring down the waiting lists. Our testing capacity has been massively limited by the level of capital investment over the past decade, caused by, drumroll please, fucking austerity. I mean, austerity is worse than Brexit. That's Brexit, I believe, only came in because of austerity. The pandemic hit the NHS that was already on its knees. If you put it to an example, you have a look at something like the miners. Everyone always blames Thatcher for destroying the mining industry. But if you have a look at the figures, Thatcher cut the throat of the mining industry. But the mining industry was already dying. There was hundreds of thousands of jobs lost before Thatcher came in. More than that was lost under Thatcher. She came in and cut the throat. So in this analogy, she's Brexit, but there was already fucking, austerity was already fucking it all up. Areas like social care, which is funded by local authorities who themselves, over the past 13 years, have had their budgets remarkably slashed by the government, so they have less money to put into social care, which is why social care is on its fucking knees. Once again, austerity. Social care is becoming overwhelmed. Its workforce crisis has now become worse than ever. We've currently got the highest vacancy rates on record. In schools, the number of teachers required to be trained in England in 22-23 was 44% below the target. The IFG estimated the government will fall short of its 20,000 target for police officers, which, if we all remember, is 1,000 less than was originally lost by austerity. It's humanity. There has to be something. People need to be bitch slapped. I'm not saying punch people, no, just fucking backhand the pricks and just listen, wake up, look at it. It's simple numbers. It would be better to just have Sesame Street run us. At least they'd understand fucking kindness, maybe some compassion. We know for certain one of them can count. Keep Elmo away from children, of course, but the rest of it. In the justice system, which is absolutely seven-shaded buggered. The whole idea that we like justice, we fucking do. Look what we've done to the justice system. We couldn't give a toss. In the justice system, the share of reported crimes that result in a charge has fallen from 17.2% in 13-14 to 5.6% in 21-22. And that's not because everyone started being nicer. No. That has led to a decline in cases that have been referred to courts, but court and prison systems are still overwhelmed because there isn't enough funding. The end of that story. We've got other stories. The founder of Ragnar mercenary group, which is a group linked to Putin, and has been accused of human rights violations, including murder, rape, just none of the fucking good ones, around the world. The founder was able to pass the UK money laundering checks to become a client of London-based law firm Discreet Law by submitting a utility bill in the name of his 81-year-old mother. Discreet Law applied to stop representing him in 2022, about a month after Russia invaded Ukraine. Does beg the question, how the fuck? Like, I've been involved in money laundering compliance in the past, and even if you're a shit firm, you do not accept a mother's utility bill. You just don't do it. And so it's one of the things we are going to have to look at with our solicitors in this country to hold them to account for their fucking actions. Because if they're willing to break money laundering rules for a bit of that sweet, sweet, blood-soaked dollar, we have to fucking get rid of them. Simple as that. Next story. In an emergency effort to cut the over 100,000 asylum cases backlog that we currently have, the government plans to largely scrap the need for applications from Afghanistan, Eritrea, Libya, Syria, and Yemen to undergo official interviews. Instead, they will be sent questionnaires. All 5 of the countries are either facing civil war or are regarded as having oppressive governments. These 5 countries were selected because between January and September last year, over 90% of the asylum applications from the countries had received some form of refugee protection. Those who want tougher actions to address the small boat migration have called these plans crazy because they don't like anything that could potentially help a fucking refugee. While advocates for asylum seekers don't like the plan, as the government will cancel any claim if the questionnaire is not returned in 20 working days. So that means that potential refugees, potential asylum seekers from these countries will have to find legal aid and answer a probably quite complex, long asylum questionnaire in a language they may not speak, which should be fun for them. I mean, hopefully there won't be any strikes. The fact that they're trying to do something about the backlog is good. Is this the perfect plan? Oh, no. You've got charities who are concerned that not having a face-to-face interview will mean that you'll have fewer asylum applications accepted. So, but we'll just have to see. Let's do a nice story, shall we? Professor Jason Ardy has become the youngest black professor ever at the University of Cambridge, a highly respected scholar on race, inequality, and education. He was unable to read or write until the age of 18, was diagnosed with global development delay and autism spectrum disorder at 3, and did not learn to speak until he was 11. He will be building on his earlier work at the University of Durham and Glasgow, addressing the paucity of black and minority ethnic people in higher education, their underrepresentation in academic careers, and challenges of creating more equitable educational experiences and outcomes for all. This fantastic story, delightful story. I hope people read more about him. I hope that he is someone that people can look at and say that there is absolutely no reason why you yourself can't have a career in academics. Brilliant story. Happy all round. Good luck to him. Fantastic. 2 stories left. Mayors from Manchester, Liverpool and London have signed an open letter to Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove, asking for an immediate rent freeze and ban on evictions in England to help renters manage the cost of living crisis. In Scotland, tenants already are under protection under emergency measures. Private renters across the UK spend 4 or 5 times more on housing costs than owners in the financial year ending 2021, with a survey by Generation Rent suggesting only 11% of landlords had raised their rent prices because of their own rising mortgage costs. Research by YouGov indicated 2.5 million renters were either behind or struggling to pay rent, a figure that is said to have increased by 45% since April 22. In the last year, we have seen higher increases in rents across the country, from a 10% up to a 50% rise, especially if you have a look in places in London. We need something. The cost of renting a fucking room is psychotic in a lot of cities. It is greed beyond the pale. I'm expecting at points to find your landlord is actually a dragon sitting on a fucking mound of gold, because it is the only level of greed that makes fucking sense to me for why we are living like this. Rent caps should be throughout the entire pissing country. We should not allow this free-for-all of mould-ridden shit heaps that people attempt to sell these fucking cupboards for thousands of pounds a pissing month by these greedy knobheads. It shouldn't be allowed. And the thing is, it's even mad when you look to get yourself like a mortgage and they don't take into account the fact that you've paid rent for the past fucking 10 years. Oh, I see you've never missed paying rent. Well, there's no way you'd be able to get a mortgage that's less than the fucking rent. Are you sure, you stupid prick? Final story. The head of Spain's largest farming association has not blamed the weather in the UK for the UK's salad shortage, but instead said that Brexit, with its impact on transportation, bureaucracy and border controls, is the underlying reason. He has said that there is no shortage in Spain and there is enough produce to supply the market. He did acknowledge the rising costs leading to a drop in production for some growers and frost affecting some artichoke and lettuce crops, but said that there were not serious issues or widespread enough to have significantly reduced market supply. The shortages, he suggested, had more to do with bureaucracy and logistics. Now, there have been a couple of other unions in Spain who have said that the weather is affecting production for things like tomatoes, but then you have a look at the fact that it's easier to get tomatoes in Ukraine during a fucking war than it is in the UK at the moment. So the weather isn't everything, but it is another example of us unwilling to admit that Brexit has done anything wrong, because if you admit that Brexit's done something wrong, then you have to look in the mirror, see your own reflection and realise how stupid you are. Anyway, I think it's Thursday today. It feels like Thursday today, so there won't be one tomorrow because I've got other stuff to do. So I shall catch you on Monday. Have a good one. Bye.